What's poppin', everybody? Cerebral24, and today I want to talk to you guys about successful deck strategies in the Pokemon TCG. Strategies that have always been successful, that have proven themselves over the years. And if you guys are new, maybe you don't have much experience and you're wondering, what kind of decks to build, what makes a good deck, strategies to focus on, these are some of the best. We're going to talk about 6. There's more, but I feel like these are the most important ones and possibly the strongest ones, but let's not get into that. So the first strategy is going to be energy acceleration decks. A lot of the best attacks in the game naturally have expensive energy costs and usually have additional costs like discarding energies or other negative effects. But the reason for that is obviously because they're powerful. So people thought, the best way to, if we want to utilize these great attacks, these expensive attacks, is we have to speed up the energy acceleration process. Basically, break the rule of 1 energy per turn. Find a way to accelerate energy and make those attacks ready, pretty much every turn, being able to use a big attack like that. Now, because of the time that's usually spent to get ready, because you usually need to involve a lot of Pokemon with abilities or other combos, these big attacks and these strategies, usually you aim to get one-hit knockouts to make up for that. So even if you're slow in the beginning, don't necessarily get knockouts because you're preparing. When you start getting one-hit knockouts, you can catch up and potentially even outpace your opponent and win. That's why they're powerful. Classic examples, this has always been in the game through the base set days with the release of Blastoise, with Rain Dance. You break the rules, attach as many water energies as you want. The other popular method is getting them from the discard pile, like we have with Malamar today. We've had Bronzong before, Electric, Blaziken with Firestarter way back in the EX days, and what have you. It doesn't have to be a strategy like this though. You could say the Chorus machine for Team Plasma Pokemon was also energy acceleration. Getting them that plasma energy from the deck, you basically get another free energy and you get a little bit of speed there. Energy acceleration is good like that too. Even the energy gain for the SP Pokemon can be considered energy acceleration because it enables them to use an attack they're not really supposed to since they don't have the necessary energy. So basically energy acceleration is good because it allows Pokemon to use attacks that they're not supposed to use yet if they were gonna get 1 energy attachment per turn. So this is why it's powerful. Obviously having a lot of energy in play means that you can promote Pokemon to free retreat, pivots like that, and just having a lot of energy around is always something useful most of the time. Okay, so the next strategy is going to be lock decks. So for the best Pokemon decks to be successful, and for any Pokemon deck to really be successful, they usually need to revolve around all of the card types, from trainers, supporters, energies, Pokemon, effects of abilities, Pokepowers and Pokebodies, how they were back in the day. It's that sort of balance, that mixture that makes a deck good. So lock decks with the ability to lock something and prevent your opponent from using anything from a card type through an ability, an effect, attaching a specific type of energy, even evolving. They have always been powerful, preventing your opponent from being able to do that, especially if it's something like a specific card type, like blocking your opponent from using supporters or trainers, items as we have today. All decks use trainers and supporters, so if you were to block one card type like that, it's always annoying for your opponent, no matter, even if they don't use many items or, they can get away with using a supporter for a turn and what have you, it's just always hindering, no matter what, especially item lock, which is why it has been so strong over the years. Of course, the premier Pokemon for item lock that we had recent times, was Seismitoad, the Seismitoad deck and all of its partners used with that guy. And before that, Seismitoad, basically its attack is what the Mewtrick deck was back in the day in the EX era with Manectric EX that basically had the same attack, and you use Mew EX to basically copy Manectric's attack too and have additional Pokemon that can basically use the locking attack. Trevenant, of course, locks that shit too. Then we had Gardevoir that blocked powers with her attack, or its attack, I guess. It's not a chick. And on and on and on. Palkia Lock was another big lock deck that blocked powers. So lock decks, they have a rich history of being successful. So another great strategy. And then the third strategy is going to be fast, aggressive, / disruptive decks. So even though the best attacks naturally cost a lot of energies, the lucky Pokemon that have the exception of having a strong attack and not costing a lot of energy, or even more than 2 energy, just costing 1 energy, end up becoming very strong and basically setting up the format and setting up the pace for the format. When you have an amazing Pokemon that can make a great attack for only 1 energy, it basically becomes the most dominant Pokemon, the fastest Pokemon, basically setting up the pace of the format. So it's these Pokemon that usually end up in fast aggressive decks that can use cheap attacks and do a lot of damage. So because of that speed and the ease of use of these Pokemon, a lot of times they also involve disruption. Like these sort of fast, speedy decks benefit more from pulling key Pokemon from the bench from your opponent and then killing them quickly, knocking them out quickly. So this is why they're powerful. Good examples would be, of course, the Buzzwole GX we have today. Before that it was Landorus EX, basically had the same attack, just a strong attack that does damage on the active for 1 and then you hit the bench too. Pokemon in general that can do good solid damage for only 1 energy. Donphan Prime was a good example. Of course, Luxchamp is a premier example of a Pokemon that basically was all about aggressiveness and disruption. Could do a lot of damage for only 1 energy that did so much, and disrupt at the same time, pull key Pokemon from the bench, do all this sorts of stuff. Okay, the next deck is going to be, it's kind of tricky to talk about actually because it's essentially 2 decks, but 1 deck as well. It's Toolbox / Anti-Meta. Anti-Meta is its own thing, but the best anti-meta decks usually have a toolbox element to them. So anti-meta speaks for itself. It's using a bunch of Pokemon that basically go up against the most popular Pokemon. Like for example, the safeguard Pokemon we have like Hoopa and Ninetales, Alola Ninetales. They block GX Pokemon. GX Pokemon are the Pokemon mostly used, so they go directly against them. Other Pokemon that are used sort of as techs that maybe can attack with any energy. They're pretty flexible with their energy costs, so you can use them to basically get the weakness advantage on a certain Pokemon. So for example, Suicune from Plasma Blast, it also had the safeguard ability, but it did 70 for 3, 1 water energy and 1 DC, you did 70. With a muscle band that was 90. So you could also hit Landorus EX for weakness, do 180. It's a good example of an anti-meta Pokemon. From cards like Enhance Hammer, Parallel City is a great example that blocks bench Pokemon, the limit on your bench Pokemon, and also can block damage from water, fire, and grass Pokemon, depending if you play it the other way around. So these are good examples. Now, the toolbox aspect, toolbox basically is having a way to grab these sorts of cards and basically the right card you want for a specific situation. So anti-meta, if they're running their anti-meta Pokemon to cover the meta, and they should have a way to be able to draw cards too, get these specific items and specific cards for the specific situation that they need. It's kind of tough for me to explain a concept like this, but I guess a good gist would be to be able to have very good flexible searching and drawing. Great examples, the best examples actually for toolbox decks that I can think of would be the Zoroark GX we have right now, a Pokemon that's a great attacker actually, and that can be self-sufficient, draw cards with his own ability, and be an attacker. The classic Ludicargo, which is basically came back in Celestial Storm. We had Macargo and Ludicolo working together. Ludicolo had a solid attack, and you could also draw a card every turn. So you use Macargo, put the card you want from your deck on the top of your deck, and then draw it. So you essentially could add any card you wanted from your deck for the situation. From Pokemon like Staraptor level X and of course Pidgeot from Fire and Leaf Green, these are basically toolbox Pokemon that can search you cards that you want in a specific situation. A deck like Seismitoad EX can also be considered a toolbox deck as well, not just a lock deck, because Seismitoad locked your opponent of course with its attack, but also use multiple Shaymin EXs to draw a bunch of cards, get the necessary disruption card necessary for the corresponding situation, and basically be more of a pain to your opponent. So very consistent decks, very flexible decks that can search and draw a lot of cards that can basically counter any situation or prepare for any situation can be considered toolbox decks, I guess you could say. All right, and then the last sort of deck, which is probably one that's sort of not as popular as before, not doing as much as before, is tank decks. So tank decks is basically what it says, tanking, being able to take damage and survive a lot, or take damage and then heal yourself, but basically be able to take a couple of hits and survive, depending on the extremity of the format, how offensive the format is. Maybe just surviving one hit and then being able to heal and then survive for next turn is enough to be a tank. But most tank decks usually you need the Pokemon to have a lot of HP, a lot of defensive capabilities, and being able to take a bunch of hits be a very big pain in the ass for your opponent to get rid of. Now, great examples for tank decks is Steelix, of course. Most of the Steelix cards have been tank Pokemon. There's a lot of Steelix decks that revolve around tanking. You can find many Steelixes that can do that shit. And Torterra from Triumphant, that's another great example. The most recent examples we had, I guess, is with perhaps Hydreigon and Darkrai from Dragons Exalted and Dark Explorers, where you would move the Darkness energy and then use Max Potion, heal the Darkrai X, which was big, or Aromatisse with Fairy Pokemon. That's the closest I'd guess with the tanking that we had. And actually the Wailord deck that went to Nationals and lost Jason Klaczynski in the end. That was kind of a tank deck as well, more of a deck out deck as well. But it was a tank deck as well because Wailord DX could take basically any hit, survive, and then heal itself with supporters like AZ and Max Potion and what have you. So you'd find that the best decks, the most successful decks in our Pokemon TCG history basically share all, or at least a lot, of these aspects. A deck like Luxchamp basically ticks every one of these aspects. It was fast, aggressive, even had lock capabilities with Power Spray, and even tanking. The deck could tank since the 110 HP level X's, Luxray and Garchomp, they could take a hit and then you would heal all the damage with Garchomp C level X, energy acceleration through the energy gain, on and on and on. I already mentioned Seismitoad X and the Shamans, and you guys should be aware of how powerful Zoroark GX is. All the deck combinations you can do with it, even run Pokemon like Garbodor. Maybe that's why Garbodor Zoroark GX won, because you have the speed of Zoroark GX, the toolbox capabilities of that Pokemon, being a cheap, fast, strong attacker, being able to draw a lot of cards, and then when you want to, sort of lock out abilities as well with Garbodor. So, quite powerful. So yeah, these are the most common themes or strategies that most of the successful Pokemon decks have had in the past and have now. Like I've said, usually the best decks, the strongest decks usually have tick all of these boxes or most of these boxes. And I'm pretty sure that's how it's going to be in the future as well. So if you want to have a good Pokemon TCG deck, you need to focus on energy acceleration. Does it have some sort of locking capabilities? Is it fast, aggressive, perhaps disruptive? Do you have great searching, great options, toolboxing options? Is it good against the meta? Can't even tank? A bunch of things. There's a bunch of other aspects that I've thought to talk about. Maybe some other strategies that can be quite powerful, maybe like spreading. But I thought these are the most standard ones, the best ones, maybe the most relevant ones. I've always been consistent in some form or another. So I hope you guys learned. Hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you guys subscribe, leave a like, share this with your friends. Saberwolf94, what's up?